What's good, everybody? And we're back with another episode of the Buffalo Fatherhood Initiative podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Sherman Webb Middlebrooks, a lifelong Buffalo resident and full-time Black man. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the good brother Antoine Johnson.
What's going on, good people? We got a special guest with us today. As always, from Buffalo, Miss Tasha Parker, rooted in love. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Wait, you from Buffalo?
I am.
Not with that accent, but go ahead.
I don't even know that. I probably shouldn't have said that. But
That's crazy. So I'm Tasha. I am born and raised in Buffalo, East Side, and I have recently relocated to DC. So
That's
I'm
where the
here,
accent
but
comes from.
I'm also there.
Oh, well, you got an accent that quick? Is
I
that
don't think
that's
so.
what you said? That's
You kind of sound a little Southern, but it's cool.
I
People
don't
say that
think so.
about me too, so it's all good.
Everybody hear something different, but
Got you. So this is a special one because this is the first time that we had a lady, a woman on the podcast. So
look at me taking the little crown.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, and we don't discriminate at all.
Sure.
Our subject matter is all about fatherhood, but there's so many different facets about fatherhood. That's not just one dimension, right? A lot of times we talk about it, people are just like fathers and sons or whatever, and like we all have a father, right?
Right,
Regardless of
relationship with them.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
I
all have
got
a father. But I had the opportunity of meeting you, Tisha, through the Oshai Foundation leadership piece. I don't forget the whole name of it. But Daniel and I, we briefly talking about it during the last episode. But it was really nice to be able to connect with other leaders like you. And now we got our own little group, right, where we're trying to build and work, help each other. So talk to us a little bit about your experience in that, how you found it, Rooted in Love, and what it's all about.
So I founded Rooted in Love in 2018. It was based off of my grandmother. So she was my little prized possession. She just was such a pure soul. She was a neighborhood grandma. She always knew everybody's birthday. She knew everybody's everything. She was just a great support. She was known in the community on Riley Street for just taking in homeless, for always giving people a place to stay. So people would always just be at her house hanging out. They would get food, they would get clothes, they would get whatever they needed. She would let them borrow money. And it was just such a weird thing to me when I was growing up. Like, that is just who she was. And, she was diagnosed with dementia. I want to say 2011, and she became nonverbal very quickly. So Rooted just kind of started as just a way to get her to speak again, to just have something for us to bond over, since she just wasn't speaking. And as soon as I formed it, she talked to me that last time, but she passed away for our first event, and that kind of just catapulted all of our thoughts on how we were gonna really take this organization to the next level. We wanted to just keep her legacy alive, so we are based out of her home. So that is our main location. It's always been like a little near and dear thing that we kept, and now we are expanding, we're growing. We offer access to quality fresh produce items, all free of charge right now, to any and everyone in the Western New York community. We wanted to stand on that, provide people with hygiene products, and do it in a discreet way so they don't feel embarrassed by being in need. So that is Rooted's main mission.
So, are you guys part of like Buffalo Food Equity Network?
No, it's crazy. I keep hearing that and being suggested to reach out to somebody in there, but I actually have not
Okay.
met anybody yet.
So before we leave today, I'll make sure
put me
that
on.
happens. Yeah, hold on. Gotcha.
I brought
Happy
up
to do that.
to her Rita Hubbard yesterday.
Yes.
But I think you guys are a little bit more connected than I am. But yeah, that's the first person I thought about in the Healthy Corner Store initiative piece.
Yep. And it's all in that same area too.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're perfect. Like what you're doing is perfect. For what's going on over there. It's a lot of with the community gardens and stuff like that too. So I know a few times we had a community garden and didn't really have the right folks to kind of like harvest it, and had issues with like disseminating some of it.
Yeah.
And then also I know our pastor, Pastor George at Lincoln Memorial, like when we do the food pantry, sometimes like if the weather is bad and people aren't like out and about, we might have extra bags, but that's like literally right there on like Northland and Maston. So it's
That's
like
awesome.
all the same area. So there might be an opportunity to kind of collaborate. If we have like an overflow to be able to support what y'all doing too.
I love that. And I mean, vice versa too. For us, especially because we have our main location that has our main programming for people to really be able to pull up, just get the produce bags that they need. We keep it very discreet now since the pandemic. I mean, they literally pull up, we put it in their trunk and they drive off. So it's been really great for that. But we expanded to free fridges in the city. So we have one outside of Delavan Grider Community Center.
Okay.
We have one outside of or inside the Frank Merriweather Library.
Okay, cool.
And now we're taking the steps to open a Pay What You Can market. So that's going to be a big undertaking, but these next 6 months, it's going to be really incredible to see how it grows and transitions and moves.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely excited to hear that you're doing this kind of work and that you're leading that, and also to hear that like is rooted in like love for your grandma. Because both of my grandmother and my great grandmother got like a history of that kind of community service work too. So yeah. I dig that.
I was thinking as you were talking about your grandmother that I think there's something about, you know, I don't know about other cultures, but I know like in the Black community, like grandmothers are, you know, big. Yes. You know, my grandmother, I was just talking in the last episode, like she's like my second mother. My mother, single mom, and she pretty much like raised me. Like when I wasn't with my mom, I was with my grandmother over her house, you know, with my cousins and stuff. And she, similar to your experience, like an open door type of, that was everybody else's house. They just go in their house, go in their fridge, you know, start eating stuff. You can't do that over everybody's house. But people just felt welcome. You know, she never was like turning people away. One time my aunt had like this exchange student from UB who just so happened to be Chinese, like living with them for months. We're like, yo, what's this about? My grandmother didn't say nothing. So
maybe need somewhere to stay.
No questions, literally no questions, no thought behind it. Just all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I can count. It would take both hands, both feet to count how many times we would pull up and grandma had like a homeless person in the back. And I'm like, she wouldn't even say anything when you walk in the house. Like you walk in, you go up the stairs. Now the back room at my grandmother's house was like the coveted room. Like that was where the kids could watch TV. You had all the best snacks in there, and we bust in the back room and we're like, who is this person? Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you here? Why didn't she say anything? But you know, now it's like the laughing running joke in my family. Like we always laugh about it. Like we thought that was so weird. And now when we first opened, we used to do clothes. So we set up a little coffee station. So we would always have like homeless people coming in. And I remember one of her neighbors, she passed away recently, but she lived 2 doors down, and she's like, oh, you guys just brought that back, didn't you? Like, you just always have random people. We're like, yeah, that back. We're just like grandma over here. Like now, you know, it's so incredible. I feel like in Black families, like what a grandmother represents.
Yeah.
And I feel like I took it so lightly for so long. Yeah. And then like once, you know, you don't have that experience, you don't have that opportunity. Now I appreciate people's grandparents so much more. Like when I meet older people, I'm like, like certain things remind me of like my childhood. And I just like, if I could experience things again, I'm like, man, I can't wait to tell her about this. Like, I don't know. It's so different.
It is different. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are grandfathers, right? So grandfathers, so I'll tell you this, growing up, I had 5 grandmothers. You know, I had grandmother and then great grands. So, you know, now they kind of dwindled down as, you know, the years gone by, some of them passed. But I only know of 2 grandfathers. One grandfather on my father's side is alive and well, but I don't really know him. Probably saw him once, right? He didn't even recognize who I was. Other grandfather on my mother's side, I knew him better, but didn't really have a relationship with him. Wouldn't say I looked up to him, just was my grandfather. So, and he had a lot of kids, you know what I'm saying? He, you know, did his thing. But you know, but the relationship dynamics, you know, I don't think about them in the same way I think about grandmothers. What are you all's experiences been like? And then I want to talk a little bit about our fathers.
Well, I mean, like I would just say, like, well, my mom's dad, he kind of like left the family, so it was kind of like we had a relationship with him from afar, where like my uncles always saying like, especially like once I got like around like age 11, 12, and really when I started like messing with girls and like had a few pregnancy scares as like a teenager, they like, hey, look, boy, that whole leave your family stuff, that stopped with him. The rest of, if your last name is Webb, like as a man, like you take care of your kids. I don't care how old you are, how much money you got or don't got. You that abandoning your family stuff, stop with that, man. And so like that was kind of like the way he was talked about by like my uncles, because my mom got 6 brothers and she's the only girl. So like it's a bunch of men in the family that's like, yeah, we not gonna be like him. So they all got kids, they all take care of their kids. And so I learned that from them. And then my father's father was like my first friend. Like he was my favorite babysitter. How I interact with little kids is how he interact with me. I'm just like, your caveat to do whatever you want to do. So you want to cook, you want to get in trouble, whatever your parents said you can't do, they ain't supposed to do, that's exactly what we about to go do. And that's how my grandfather was. And so like, that's kind of how I am with kids too. So I value my relationship with my grandpa.
That's super cool.
I feel like my experience is similar to yours, Antoine. My dad's dad, I didn't have a relationship with. I actually think I met him maybe twice. Yeah. And then my mom's father is similar to your mom's father. He removed himself kind of from the family. He came back later on, like later in our lives. I want to say I was already in high school, but the dynamics were always like he lived away. So he was always like, they were still married, but it was for us, it was black and white. Like, okay, that's grandpa, but he just lives there. And we never really had like the physical relationship with him. So then when he did move back to Buffalo, it was just strange. Like, I mean, now my family got drama, but he ended up, that's where all his secrets started to kind of come out and unravel. My mom was one of 7. So we have found out like a Thanksgiving when he first moved back that he actually had a whole other kid. And we met him at Thanksgiving. Like my grandmother was open the door, like, come on in. You look just like him. You might as well come on in. Like it's such a weird family dynamic. But I mean, that grandfather, he was not emotionally there, but he was the grandfather. Okay, well, we're selling Girl Scout cookies, or my brother's in Boy Scouts. Like he'll write a check and he'll buy it. So he's it was just what we thought was normal. But now I'm like, I couldn't imagine that when having children now.
Yeah. Speaking of that, so I'm reading this article and they were like, people talk a lot about girls having daddy issues, but they don't talk about men. And I'm thinking about myself like, really? Like, well, because all we talk about is men having daddy issues. So, in our groups that we've run over the last few years, we pride ourselves on like being vulnerable and transparent. So we talk about our relationships with our own fathers. Like I talk about my relationship with my father growing up, which was really fractured. He was in and out of my life, but also emotionally distant. So I don't really know him that well, right? Like I knew him through the way he interacted with my mother, which was largely not healthy, right? They argued a lot. At one point, he was physically abusive, and it just wasn't right. And so I didn't really learn a lot from him. I learned the verbally aggressive stuff, which is not good. Right. So I'm trying to weed that stuff out of my life. But there was a lot of pain, right, around my experience with him. So we talk about there's this idea or thing called father wounds. Yeah. Right. So overcoming father wounds, and whether it be, emotional stuff, or some people were physically abused. That wasn't my experience, but those are things that we unpack, right? Peeling back the layers. And so as we talk about that, we don't hear a lot about like the women's side, right? Like the hurt and how like that manifests itself sometimes in their lives. So sometimes I'll hear guys say like, oh, like she's looking to me as her partner to be like a dad, like a father figure, because she had daddy issues or whatever the case may be. So hopefully you can help shine some light on, regardless of what your experience was like with your father, why sometimes, specifically like when women have like father wounds, Because the reality is this, right? Regardless of whether a father was present or not, like everybody, like none of us are perfect, right? I had kids, and when they get older, they probably gonna be like, my dad was cool, but he didn't do X, Y, and Z, right? Like we not gonna hit everything 100% as parents, right? So talk to us from your perspective, like how those things are kind of processed, right?
I mean, I think I have to shed light first off on my relationship with my father. My father growing up, my parents have been together for, I think, married 36 years. Like they've been together since they were very young. But I will say, I think when it comes to how he parented, he was definitely more of a provider dad. Like, okay, I put a roof over your head, I pay the bills. That is the extent. There was no emotional carrying of how I realize now I need it. And I think it took me like a lot of resentment and my dad and I are very similar. So we fight a lot. And it's to the point now where I'm like, I'm best when I'm not living with you. Like we get along great now since he had health issues. So when he had his last heart attack, he's had 3 heart attacks. His third one was the scariest. And from there, then he was like, okay, I realize now that I didn't give you guys what you needed as kids, but I have to unlearn how even I was raised. Like my father's relationship with his father was toxic. So I think a lot of times people don't speak about that generational curse, and they don't speak about those actual wounds. You know, he came from a generation where men don't speak about their emotions. They don't speak about how they feel. And he's still like, to this day, it's like pulling teeth. Like, okay, communicate with me. What did I do to make you upset? Because you're just upset, not talking to me. But why? What happened that I upset you? What did I do? So I think now, as I'm an adult, and especially my brother, like, and now that my brother has a daughter, that's where he's just now like, okay, so I'm understanding what I did with you. And now that I have a granddaughter, like I know how I want to be with my granddaughter. And he always brings up my mom's mom. Like, oh, you know, when we needed anything, we went to my grandma. Like we only went to my grandma. We didn't go to our parents. We went straight to her. So he's like, okay, well, now I know that's the type of grandparent that I want to be. And I want her to feel safe with me. I want her to feel like she can come to me. So I think, you know, especially as a female, a lot of people don't even realize, most times we have depictions on what we think a daddy issue is, or what we feel like the wounds are of our past. I mean, I spent 2 years in therapy, and I think I hit a year in, and then I was like, I never thought I had daddy issues. I just thought like I didn't really learn how to communicate because we had to grow up so fast since my parents were, you know, ill when we were young. So now I'm like, oh, you know, these are skills that I thought I had that maybe I don't even realize I've never been good at. Like how I even communicate when I'm like in a relationship with someone, I've realized that was toxic and I didn't know that it was toxic. But I think it's a lot on a man. And I think as females, we project a lot, and then we place like our expectations for a man to live up to where we're at, but we don't fully do the work. Like we may realize, okay, I want this, but we may not know how to say it. So my father wound specifically is with how I communicate. I didn't realize it was aggressive. I didn't realize I was placing expectations on people that maybe it wasn't fair. And I don't know how to effectively tell you what I'm looking for, what I need from you, but I know ultimately, okay, that's unfair to place that expectation. And then if they're not living up to it, okay, you're done. I'm not dealing with that. You're gone. So I think when it comes to father wounds, you know, it's gonna depend on a person's level of grace that they're extending. And that's vice versa in a relationship. Like I want a partner that's gonna understand that even though I'm a work in progress and where I may be healed, you can speak to me in a way that I'm hearing what you're saying. You can speak to me in a way that's telling me this is toxic behavior or these are toxic patterns, even though I may not necessarily know. So I think having grace for each other in a partnership, but also having just an opportunity to really be self-aware and allowing your truth to really come through, because I'm way more self-aware now, and I'm way more like, okay, ooh, I thought I said that so nicely. In my tone, my delivery may be like what I hear it as, and then somebody else will be like, damn. I was like, oh, really? You think I'm rude? I didn't know. Like, I really didn't, but I didn't know. So I think having the self-reflection after in situations, not everybody has that, though.
That's right. That not everybody does.
And I'm just gonna say, because I can't speak on behalf of females. I'll speak for sure on me and my experience and knowing myself now. Like, those are things that I know now, and every day is a work in progress. So like how you said you still work on how you communicate with your wife, you work on especially accomplishing her needs when it comes to the emotional carrying in a situation.
She heard you talking about it.
She said, pick up. But, those are things that when you were talking about it, I was like, man, I commend her, because I don't even know how to ask people when I'm like getting to know somebody. I don't even know how to tell them in a way that doesn't sound like codependent. And like, I need you to be, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I know it sounds codependent, or
you saying it like that was triggering for me.
It sounds, or I'm like putting so much on them, like, because I would never want my partner to ever say about me that I feel like she's projecting, like she wants me to be her father. No.
Oh, yeah.
I want a partner, but also I think that comes with just like a level of grace and truth. And wanting to grow together instead of just having one person be here, another person be here, and you're not even on the same level, not speaking the same language, but you have these expectations for each other.
Yeah. Oh, you're preaching good, man. I wish we had a lot more time.
For real. I was not going to interrupt.
Because I think so many people, but specifically women, can relate to what you were sharing, and the way that you were just so honest about it, where it wasn't like you were making excuses for the behaviors. You were just shining the light on like the truth. But I know you say you don't speak for every woman, and I get it, because I think sometimes we're in spaces and people think that we're supposed to speak for all men, and that ain't the case. But I just appreciate your authenticity and sharing, because I think you speak to a wide audience, folks who are dealing with that. So we are on the verge of wrapping up here. Any last thoughts? I know you didn't get a chance to jump.
No, this was perfect. I just really appreciate you again with the transparency. And I look forward to having more women join us on the show and really share and talk about fatherhood, especially because like I'm a girl dad, and so like when I hear women talk about their dads, I'm like, I either really want my daughter to talk about me like this, or I don't want my daughter to talk about me like this. So I'm listening and taking notes because I'm trying to intentionally raise her. So I appreciate you sharing and giving me some tips.
But you know what? Shout out to my dad, because that's my guy no matter what. Wherever we came from, where we started, it doesn't, at least that was not the end.
Yes.
Now we are a work in progress in our relationship, and like through him, I'm learning so much more about myself. Even though it should have been like this when we was young, now as an adult, I'm learning so much more about myself, and I'm learning so much more about, our family dynamics and how we could all be better and how we could grow, especially now that we have that next generation. Like what all do we want to be? So I appreciate the time.
Yeah, what they say is not how you start, but how you finish.
I like that.
That is, that's powerful. So I thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Well, so this has been another episode of the Buffalo Fatherhood Initiative podcast. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Make sure you like this video. It's going to help us out in that algorithm. And again, share this with somebody who's going to take some value from this content, man, and be on the lookout for the next episode. Peace.